Good evening, everyone. This is a regular meeting of the Urbana Community Development Commission, and we're meeting for the month of June 2017. With that, we'll go down our agenda. I now call the meeting to order, and next we'll have roll call.
Okay. Fred Cobb,
Here?
Janice Bankston, Ann Hines Silvis,
Here.
Chris Diana,
Here.
Jerry Moreland,
Here.
Lauren Carplus, Karen Hodgen Jones,
Here.
Michael Brown,
Here.
Abdul Hakim Salam.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Next, we'll have approval of the minutes from April 2017. We'll take a minute or two to go over those, and after which I will entertain a motion for approval or modifications. Okay. Anyone need more time? If not, I'll entertain a motion for approval. Is there a
I move
motion?
we approve the minutes from the April 25th meeting as written.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve these minutes. Any questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Ayes have it. Minutes are approved as written. Okay, next we have petitions and communications. Kelly, any written?
No, we haven't
Communications?
received anything.
Okay, audience participation. There's no audience, so we'll move on. Staff report.
Okay, so I'll go over the staff briefing that was sent out. So regarding HUD activities since our last meeting, we of course received our grant agreement for the supportive housing program, which is why we are now bringing the subrecipient agreement with Courage Connection. Still in the process of transferring that grant to them, which HUD would say take a year or two, so we're working on that. We received our letter regarding our monitoring results for our community development block grant. Nothing different than what was said at the exit conference. So we are working on, we're actually going to be meeting this week to talk about what we need to do, some policies and some procedures. Nothing really alarming or outstanding. So, and then we'll submit that to HUD for their approval, and then once they approve, then the findings and everything are all taken care of, and then we can move on until the next time they decide to monitor us. So, and then when they were here for our monitoring, they also talked about a grantee conference. They try to do an all HUD entitlement grantee conference in Chicago, and then they have been splitting it up into the different regions. And so while they were here, they talked about they needed to set up for the central Illinois and like south west part of the state. They kind of put it all together and have like a grantee conference. And so we, of course, said, well, we have the Urbana Civic Center. This would be a great place to have the conference. And took them to the Civic Center, and they actually liked it and said, let's do it. So we're going to have an MT conference here in July, mid-July, and it will be in Central, so it'll be like Springfield, Peoria, Bloomington, Danville, Decatur, even around like St. Louis. So it'll be a couple of days. So, and they're already starting to send out emails telling everybody to put it on their calendar. And even they've asked IDA, Illinois Housing Development Authority with the state, to come down from Chicago and do presentations on a couple of, like the blight reduction program, the grant that we have, and some other things. So I think it'll be really good. Also, the continuum of care around the central area as well will be invited. So there'll be quite a few that will be coming here. So that'll be real exciting to have it here. The last time they had it a year or so ago, it was in Decatur. So we'll be able to highlight a lot of the restaurants downtown since they'll be close, so we're looking forward to that. Also, you can see the different things, working on next year's budgets, continuing, working with Rand Tool, working to get into the disbursement system so that we can work on their CAPER, working with their HUD rep and ours. Also continuing to just, monitor budgets. Social service funding was decided by council, and then we met with the Cunningham Township supervisor to talk about the process since she just came on board in May, and then worked through who all got funded and figured out the bulk of the agencies are with Cunningham Township because they have the bulk of the money, and then with that we were able to figure it all out. So the next thing will be letting agencies know how much they're getting funded, and so they can start submitting their audits and other information by next October. Let's see, you can see here Randy with the housing rehab projects, how many he's been working on. The blight reduction program, we have the 15 projects done, and now we are just waiting for reimbursement back from the state. And after this week, we hopefully will have been reimbursed for about 11 out of the 15, which is pretty good. So we're looking forward to that. Working on doing drawdowns and expenditures, of course, showing all the different meetings that we're attending. And then I would like to add on here as well that with the new fiscal year and all that, there's like new changes, and one thing is that Elizabeth Tyler, and I'd sent an email out, but sending a reminder, she is retiring after 17 years with the city as our director for our department. And so with that, there is a at the Civic Center, there's a retirement going away for her, so you are all welcome to attend. It's like 3 to 4:30 on Thursday afternoon. There'll be proclamations and signs and all that, so wishing her well. Started out as an assistant planning manager and then moved up to the director. So yeah, so there's a lot that she has been involved in. Her knowledge and her help will be missed by everybody. So and then eventually, I believe her and her husband will be heading to California. So nice retirement. So anyway, and then also I wanted to report that we are having 2 commissioners who are retiring as well. Janice Bankston, who was unable to come tonight, and Lauren Carplus. are both retiring. And so with that, I have a couple of things I wanted to give Lauren. This is a certificate of appreciation for serving 3 years on the commission, signed by the mayor. And then that's the thing. Yes, please.
Mhm.
This is, so turn it around. Car plus court. And then on the back, it says that, you know, the date that you were, so Community Development Commission. So, and we also, you're welcome. So we also have one for Janice as well, a certificate of appreciation. And her sign says Bankston Boulevard. So, since she wasn't able to make it, we will take it to her house and give her the, and she says she was sorry she couldn't make it and wanted to thank everybody and enjoyed her time. She started in, well, my records show that she was appointed like in 2008, but there's some speculation that she may have been on the commission long time ago, but I don't have the records for that. So that was way before my time, and my records show that it was like 2008. So, so yeah, so we have that for her as well. So, so I wanted to thank Lauren, so for all the your time and the questions that you asked that were, you know, much appreciated, and so and your input. So, thank you.
Thank you for this, and thank you to everyone here too. It's really thoughtful. It's nothing about the commission that's making me leave. I just got so busy working 2 jobs and kid on the way, and you know, all of that. It just, all of my volunteer work and all the other stuff I had to do. So it just got to be too much, and so I really appreciate the time I spent here. And I'll keep watching you on TV every Tuesday.
And feel free to come and provide public input and comment if you so desire. That would
Yes, now I will.
yes. And congratulations on. Did you say you had a child on the way?
Yeah.
Yes. So congratulations.
Thank you.
So-
Yep. So thanks, guys.
Thank you. So with that, please let me.
Yeah. Thank you. Anyone have any questions about the staff report? If not, we'll move on
The only
to,
thing I have, Fred, is probably the thought that you and Ann and I are sharing is that we were sitting on this commission when Liz got that job.
yeah. That is true.
That's been a nice run that she
Mhm.
had there.
So definitely-
Okay, we'll move on. Is there any old business, anyone? There's nothing listed, but anybody have anything old? If not, we'll go to new business. And under new business, we have our main item for the evening, which is a resolution approving a supportive housing program subrecipient agreement with Courage Connection, fiscal year 2017 to 2018. Okay,
With that, I will turn it over to Matt to address you about the memo and everything. So.
okay.
So this subrecipient agreement that's coming before you tonight is very similar to the ones that have been brought before the CDC in past years. We usually do it on an annual basis. It's in line with our supportive housing program agreement that we have with HUD, wherein we pass federal funds through the city along to Courage Connection for their domestic violence families in transition program. And this grant is used to fund both their supportive services and the administrative costs for providing the services to the people in need, and also their operations for helping to keep their shelter open. Also just general administrative expenses as well. And the details for the costs are listed in the agreement that was provided as part of the memo. This grant has really had a storied history with us. The city of Urbana first applied for it in 1995, and it was used for acquisition and rehabilitation for three local agencies, and the only one that currently still receives this funding is Courage Connection, which eventually sort of spawned from A Woman's Place, which used it originally. And now we are at, I believe it's 21 or 22 years that they've been using this grant funding. And now they are going, since they are the only agency, we're looking to pass that funding along to them for administrating that, without us in the middle. So that's sort of down the road, and we're still working on that, as Kelly described earlier. But in the meantime, we are still sort of the pass-through entity, and so we have been granted the funding from HUD, but we need a subrecipient agreement to provide the funding to Courage Connection, and we originally applied for our renewal application, our renewal of the funding on August 12th of last year. We had found out that we were approved on December 20th of last year, and we received a signed grant agreement from HUD just earlier this month on June 6th. And the funding amount is the same as last year, around $89,000 that we will be able to provide to Courage Connection through this funding source. Programmatically, this is very much in line with our consolidated plan, and it's a key. Courage Connection serves a key role in fighting homelessness and serving as a bastion of support for people in domestic violence situations. So this is a very important grant funding source for them, and we're happy to administer it on their behalf. So the options tonight are to forward this resolution to the Urbana City Council with a recommendation for approval, forward the resolution with suggested changes, or do not make a recommendation to the Urbana City Council for approval of the agreement. And staff recommends forwarding the resolution for approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Got a question. On page 2, under programmatic impacts, it says these city staff will continue to provide programmatic and administrative support for a supportive housing program. And it says, goes on, it says, until the transfer to Courage Connection is approved by HUD. But in the paragraph above where it says fiscal impacts, in the middle of that paragraph above there, it says the transfer was agreed upon by all three parties, which are HUD, city staff, and Courage Connection. So,
It was agreed
was
upon, but
already
it's,
agreed to or not?
it was agreed upon. It's just in the process of being formalized by HUD. Us and Courage Connection and HUD, we have all agreed to transfer the grant agreement to them. But as Kelly described earlier, this is a multi-year process for HUD. We've been managing it for 20 years,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of paperwork that has to go on behind the scenes for it to formally get moved to them. Kelly's been dealing with that
What we had
directly.
to do was, we had to send a letter to Courage Connection stating, about them administering. Then they had to respond back with a letter saying that, yes, we agree that we would like to administer. Then we had to send both of those letters with the third letter to HUD saying, please see attached letters, and sent it to HUD for approval. Part of it, why it's taking a while as well, is that the program manager, who was over the homeless portion of HUD, was in the process of retiring, and recently finally retired. And then the HUD rep, who was over the continuums of care, particularly our continuum of care, he also left and went to another federal agency. So it took them a while to get another HUD rep to work with the continuum. So in the meantime, things kind of stalled. Because in addition, we also were requesting a budget amendment, and we were told that we could put both of those into one letter and send it to HUD because of the last NOFA in which Courage Connection got cut almost in half with their money. HUD just lumped off one of the budget lines, and that wasn't exactly what the reality was as far as the spending. So we sent a letter to HUD about a budget amendment and the transfer, and they got stalled. Now there is a HUD rep. It was our CDBG, Amy Hudson Hugel, is now the COC rep. So they are working on it. Apparently the letter had to go to legal, be relooked at. I mean, so it's a process. So it'll eventually will get transferred. It's just they said it could take 1 to 2 grant years to get it finally transferred. So, but HUD's aware, and they initially said yes, we agree, but we had to go through the formal process of sending letters to Courage Connection, them to us, and everything to HUD. So, does that help explain?
It's in the works.
Yes, it's in the works.
Okay. Go ahead.
This might be just somewhat tangential, but with Courage Connection's financial crisis that they're undergoing right now, I was just wondering if you've heard from them, or, would we lose this grant entirely if it's in the process and Courage Connection, has to close for a period of time? Because from my understanding, it was very touch and go because of the state of Illinois budget. So I was just wondering if you had the latest from them and how it would affect this transition.
Well, you want to talk about some of that? And
Sure. Yeah, I mean, what we know is the same as what's available in the public, about Courage Connection's financial situation. Obviously they've been saying that the state budget situation is hurting them a lot, and it's putting them at risk. And
they did meet with, like, myself and Libby. They met with people from United Way. So they've met with a lot of, like, the funders in the community to try to come up with a plan. And I know that they have a plan in place. I think I saw where the Junior Women's Club was matching for a donation, dollar for dollar. So I know they do have a plan in place trying to get the funds. And they're, I was going to mention about Cunningham Township. We met with Danielle Chenoweth, who's the Cunningham Township supervisor, and she has extra funds that have not been spent, and that she said that may be a possibility to assist Courage Connection in some way with those funds. So, so there is a plan in place, and they are, different entities are trying to assist with Courage Connection. I know as well, our mayor was called to come to Springfield and present to the General Assembly there about the impact of having no state budget for this community. Also, I know that the mayor and the mayor of Champaign together wrote a formal letter about the budget impasse and how it's affecting communities and social service agencies. So there are plans and things in place trying to move this along. So specifically with these funds, we aren't sure exactly what would happen, and that's something that's on our radar to mention to HUD. In fact, HUD is coming down in mid-July around the same time as the grantee conference to monitor this program. which would be us and going to Courage Connection. And we will, if we don't get a chance to before then, we will talk to them about at that time.
We are hopeful that one of the advantages of us being the pass-through agent or the pass-through entity for these funds is that if Courage Connection was unable to use them in the manner that they had applied for transitional housing, that we could lobby HUD to then apply them to another agency. So that's sort of our rough idea of what would happen, but yeah, we're not entirely sure at this point where, how that would exactly play out.
Yes, go ahead.
So a follow-up to that, related to that, in the case that we fully transition to Courage Connection being the recipient, would they be the sole recipient in perpetuity? Would the city be in any way able to facilitate other organizations that might be SHP funding eligible accessing those funds in the future?
That's a good question, and that was something we would have to ask HUD. Because I mean, we've had this grant for 21, 22 years, and they originally started with 3, and then it became 2 when Courage Connection Center for Women in Transition merged with the Women's Place to form Courage Connection, and then Salvation Army stepped out. So it's one thing for an agency to step out, another for them to step in. I don't know. We would have to ask HUD how that would work. It's possible that if Courage Connection was the sole, once it's completely transferred to them, they could do a sub recipient or sub grantee with someone and give partial funding. I mean, that's a possibility too, like how we do administer. And so we'd have to have to ask HUD some of these questions because we're just not sure.
So that means that currently we're unsure if Courage Connection closes, the funds might disappear. We might not have access to them again. It's possible. And we also don't know, Courage Connection could grant the grant now and then the money could never go anywhere else. Those are 2 possibilities. Is that correct? That we have to ask HUD about because we do not know the answer currently?
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
we need to, any questions we have, we need to check with them. And then the third one is that, since we administer, if they folded, could we, because we would still be administering, what could we do with those funds so they don't get lost? So that's like a third question too, so.
I'll get about 3 questions on this. One would be, it goes along with the idea of financial impact on them, et cetera. One of the purposes of having HUD grants administered through municipalities is to remove some of that administrative burden from the recipients, which is time and cost, et cetera. Now, it'll be nice if the city is able to save costs by not administering it, but that doesn't mean the administration goes away. So we're talking about an added administrative burden and cost on an organization that's questionable how long they can keep their doors open, which seems not like a real good plan to add more cost and burden to them right now. I'm curious what the rationale for why that was going to be financially better for them.
Well, they actually already have several other grants that they are directly getting from HUD. So and this was something that they thought they could do, is if they received this grant, that they could then merge it with maybe one of their other grants. Because, this grant covers, they have 3 houses. This only covers 2 of the houses. The third house, the UPS, is on its own grant directly with HUD. So what in essence they were thinking is that they would combine all of it into
So
one
they
grant.
didn't feel it's going to be an added burden then?
No, it
from
would,
their-
yeah, they didn't
okay.
feel it would be an added burden.
That's good. The second question goes along the lines of some of the others that were asked here. when we started this, it's been regrettable since that time that we dropped from 3 to 2 to 1, and some of the resources don't seem to be available anymore to go out and work with and solicit more organizations to be a part of that, and I'm not sure the organizations are there who want to be. But it would seem like this kind of grant, traditionally, what I've seen is once you let those go, you don't really put the genie back in the bottle. It's now somebody else's grant. And that does bring to mind the problematic possibilities of you give a grant, instead of having the grant with the city and funds to use, it goes to someone else, they go under, and the grant is gone. The other thing, it doesn't seem to leave us as a city or as a commission the ability to expand to potentially other, if another group came to us right now seeking funds, we would have to tell them we don't really have them, or as you noted, then they start applying for funds to another organization that's supposed to share a fund. I don't see any part of that really working in the real world. So it sounds to me like once it becomes their grant, it's their grant, and the city of Urbana is kind of out of that business.
Well, part of why there's been a lot of reductions over the years is because of the priorities that are set by HUD. Transitional housing used to be a big priority, but in the last at least 3-4 years or so, HUD has shifted their priority to more permanent supportive housing and like rapid rehousing funds, so that someone is homeless, they get funds immediately to get a place, and versus transitional housing. That is just not considered a priority by HUD anymore, which is why those funds keep going. Courage Connection has, in the past, they have had 2 separate programs. They're homeless and they're domestic violence. Because of the cuts from HUD, they have combined them into one. So it is now called actually domestic violence, families in domestic violence only, homeless and domestic violence together. So that they could, because they have found that a lot of the clients, families that came in, that there was indeed domestic violence in their past, and therefore were eligible for their domestic violence services. So because of the cuts that happened, they combined those into one program. And they also, through social service, with the city general fund, the consolidated social service funding, they also received combined funds together for that one program. So they have done some maneuvering of their programs so that they can still serve people, families,
Right.
that way. So
Yeah, I do. I understand that that's diminished as a priority of HUD. I believe we still carry it in the same position and with the same weight in the annual action plan and so forth as we always did. It's been still remains a priority of the city of Urbana as far as I know. So again, I would that falls into the same line of questioning. If that's still a priority for the city and we're giving away our only vehicle that deals with transitional housing, then we apparently need to revisit the priorities, because it sounds like we aren't really serving that priority the way we necessarily could or should by handing that off.
well, yes, in our comp plan and annual action plan, it's homelessness in general, and we are involved in a lot of different things that deal with homelessness. Besides, administering that, we also administer the Emergency Solutions Grant on behalf of agencies that get HUD funding to the state, and then we apply and administer on their behalf. So,
Mhm.
yeah, and with, as far as there's not really that many transitional housing programs really in the community. They have shifted to more permanent, or it's some kind of transitional plus supportive services for disabilities and those things. I mean, that's why the Time Center and Stepping Stone Salvation Army, because of emergency shelters and transitional housing just not being a priority for HUD. So, and so with that, if we were able to even have another agency that could step in, I'm not sure what agency that would be. And that would have to be probably approved by HUD. And so, yeah.
Well, I guess
So.
probably where my concern would be, and I don't mean this to sound critical of anyone, staff or anybody else, but as you yourself noted here, there are a number of good questions, and I think key questions that I think ought to be asked before an agreement is made and is in the works to be approved, not afterward. Because actually their answers to those questions are irrelevant at this point. If they tell you it's gone and you can't do anything about it and administer it, what are we going to do? Unwind the deal? It doesn't sound like it's moving forward to approval. So I'm curious, as I sometimes am, why something of this scope with a HUD project that has run, as you noted, through this commission for the 20-some years that it's been around, why this discussion never came up before in this commission and didn't originate here to ask some of these same questions on the front end and take them to council. We are doing an after-the-fact review of a project that apparently has already been agreed to by the city, the entity, and HUD. In which case, I don't really know why we're even bothering to talk about it.
Go ahead.
Can you speak a little bit about what the efficiencies are that would be gained and their need? It says specifically, we've decided to transfer the administration of this grant to Courage Connection to more efficiently make use of the remaining funds. It also says there's no direct fiscal impact on the city general fund because the program, the funding comes from HUD. Is it the cost of our staff? Is it then allowing this money going directly toward their staff? I mean, what is the efficiency that actually is gained?
Sure. We have to obviously work with HUD to report on what this grant does for Courage Connection, the number of people served, and prepare what's called an annual progress report. That, along with processing invoices for Courage Connection, it all takes staff time and hours that could be used for us to work on other grants and to more efficiently use those as well. And as Kelly said, Courage Connection does have the staff capacity to handle putting together an APR, and they do have financial staff and software to be able to, receive invoices or to receive payments directly from HUD. So it wouldn't be much of a burden on them since they already do it for other grant sources as well. So it would really just free up our staff time to a certain degree and give us more freedom to work on other grants.
And also the administrative amount that we, all the administrative would go to them as well. So that would be more funds for them to administer. And then, there was something else I was going to say.
Where does that money go currently? Because it says that there's no fiscal impacts on the city direct fund. So are we not receiving those administrative
We
funds?
are.
And we would no longer
a
receive
portion.
them?
Yeah, if we transfer, if it's, completely approved, then they would have all the funds and the administrative funds as well.
So isn't that a fiscal impact on the city?
But we have other grants that we've received that. We get all of our grants we get administration for, so it wouldn't.
And now that amount will be less, right?
For reference, the amount of administrative funds that we received through SHP was, I think, somewhere in the order of $3,000. It was certainly, an amount that, it's not an insignificant amount, but at the same time, we are able to cover our salaries with home and CDBG admin cap, and that's what primarily gives us the money. And those $3,000 we feel could probably be better used at Courage Connection, cover their administration.
We also get administrative funds for the Emergency Solutions Grant, for the Blight Reduction Program, and we also, when we do environmental reviews for the Housing Authority, we get paid for that. And we are also, by assisting the Village of Rantoul with doing their CAPER and providing some technical assistance, we will also be getting paid that as well. So I think as of right now, money that we have received is more than what we would be losing for the administration part, based on all these other things that we've been doing.
I don't mean to be pedantic. This stands independent of those things, right? So whether this is managed by the city or not, whether that $3,000 is received by the city or not, it does not affect the other grants. Is that correct? So isn't this technically a net loss of $3,000 for the city?
It is, but currently those funds, our salaries they don't really go to our salaries. They go into a revenue fund for that. But our salaries are funded through other grants that we receive. So we just feel that the impact of the administrative funds would be better off at a nonprofit.
Okay, but that's not what it says under fiscal impacts, right? It says there will be no direct fiscal impact on the city general fund, as all funding for this program comes from HUD. But are we losing money? Sorry, I'm clearly not understanding something.
And that is true. I mean, that is unavoidable, that we would be losing administration costs through this grant. And yeah, I apologize that did not.
But we felt that it was such a small amount compared to overall with CDBG and home. We have much more administrative funds from those, plus the blight reduction program. We get administration from that as well. So
I'm glad you'll still be employed whether we handle this grant or not.
yes.
Yeah, I think for the commissioner, I think where that phrase, normally falls in there, there's two phrases in there. There is no general fund impact because nothing ever came from there. That's kind of a separate sentence in there. I think where they usually look at these is that there will be less funds coming to the city, but there will be less work being done, so it's a kind of a wash. The funds sort of transfer over to the other entity.
Thanks,
Suppose
everyone,
if
for
you
the
looked at it as
clarification.
an impact to the city, if eventually all of those grants went somewhere else and all of the work and all of the funds, then somebody would say, we apparently don't need as many people at the city because there isn't anything left to do. But
Because-
as a single entity, it isn't much.
Thank you.
Because initially, I mean, when I started, we had like 6 people, and now we're down to 3 plus a half time, yet we still have all the work, and then plus other grants that we've gotten. So if this being a small grant, and if it helps Courage Connection, and they can then, put it with their other grants, and relieve some of our time, it's worth it for them and us.
So I guess my central question then is, if Courage Connection were to fold or have to close for a period of time during the state budget crisis, would there be the possibility of receiving the grant back for the city, or is the grant lost? I guess that's just my central question, is just what happens to this grant if Courage Connection is no longer open?
Well, I think you could probably plug it in here, because under number 2, we can make it contingent upon the viable operation of Courage Connection. If they cease to be viable, then the funds revert. You plug that in there.
And under Section 9 of the agreement in the memo, on page 5, it states that failure of the subrecipient to provide the supportive housing in the minimum amounts and for the minimum time period in accordance with the requirements of Attachment A provisions, upon due notice of any such defaults, the city may take various actions. And I believe one of those is
reduce or recapture the grant authorized. So we have, for this agreement, yes, thank you for pointing that out. Yes, I forgot about that. So, yes, we can, because this, I don't think that the grant is going to transfer, so we have this for the next year. If something happens, we can recapture those funds and figure out what else we can do with those.
But just to define that, and that's a question that still remains to be answered, we're only recapturing that under the guidelines of the subrecipient agreement. As soon as there ceases to be a subrecipient agreement, we have no idea whether we could recapture the funds if they went under sometime 3 years, 4 years down the road.
if that happened and the grant goes through and is transferred to them, we would be effectively removed from the grant.
Right.
What we would do then is if another agency came to us and said, we have a program, but we don't have the administrative support to be able to manage it, and we'd like to partner with the city, that's something that, we would reapply through the Champaign County Continuum of Care and be a new project with them, and that's something that would be taken up should that arise, and we would definitely listen to that. I mean, if another agency wanted to come to us with that, I mean, that's something that we would certainly consider.
And that's what happened with the Emergency Solutions Grant when the state told agencies that they no longer were going to directly work with agencies that were receiving less, if they were receiving less than $25,000, they had to find someone else to administer. So that's when the Continuum came to us and said, you have experience in administering various grants, homeless and such. Would you be willing to administer on agencies that receive less than $25,000? So that's how we got involved with the Emergency Solutions Grant. So.
I just have a comment.
Yeah.
It seems to me that one of the purposes of the city is to kind of foster the development and progress of the nonprofits that work in our community. And this seems like a success story to me, that for 20-some years we've worked with these organizations. Here's one that's ready to take on the full responsibility of the grant, including the administrative burden, thus the administrative cost from the grant. So to me, this is a logical and a good outcome that they're ready to take this on. So while I think that there's a little bit of concern, and that's not our budget or HUD's, it's the state's budget that gives us concern, I do think this is the right thing to do, and I feel good about it. They're ready to be a fully functioning administrating agency, and I think we helped them along to that. So, good job.
Thank you. And that's part of, in looking at their capacity and seeing, I mean, they've had this grant for, number of years, and they've had other grants that they have directly with HUD, and they administer those grants properly and fully, and so based on that, plus, other things we looked at, that's why we felt that and they were willing and wanted to as well, so.
Okay, is there further discussion? If not, I guess we should entertain a motion. And if someone feels that one of the items that was raised by Chris pertaining to losing the money. Perhaps you can make this recommendation contingent upon the city pursuing recapturing funds if it looks like there's going to be a failure of Courage Connection. You know, some such contingency in there. But in any event, I'll entertain a motion.
I guess I'm concerned about these remaining questions, and I would move that we do not make a recommendation for the Urbana City Council to approve this agreement. And I can understand if no one wishes to second that.
Is there a second? Motion fails for lack of a second. Is there another motion?
I move that we forward the resolution to City Council as written. My concerns were satisfied when Section 9 was pointed out to me. I would hope that within a year, Courage Connection could get their finances in order, the state could get their finances in order. And it seems like, you know, that they're the only organization of its kind currently providing such a service in town, and I think that it's vital that they continue to do so in whatever capacity they need.
Here we have a motion and a second to forward the agreement with a recommendation for approval, forwarded to City Council with a recommendation for approval. Any further discussion?
I would say, in going along with my fellow commissioner there, while there are some things that I'm concerned about, they don't actually have to do with the subrecipient agreement, which is kind of a standalone, ongoing agreement for the regular operation of that organization. Without that, we wouldn't be administering it or anything else. My concerns are more with regard to the future status, which is a completely different contract, which is not one that we're reviewing that agreement or anything at this time.
And if I may join in saying, the concern is we have a contract where the subrecipient, the transfer happens, they administer the funds. If that fails, we recapture. In the interim, if additional entities emerge that might be eligible for those funds, it falls exclusively to this organization to manage how it is that they might craft the subrecipient agreement. That is the only hole in this that I see, but that is not necessarily something that we can control. So that's my continuing reservation. However, not enough to hold the motion.
Okay, any further comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed, no.
No.
Ayes have it, and the motion carries. Okay. That was our only item of business under new business. We have no study session. Are there any other items or issues that a commissioner would like to raise at this point? If not, meeting is now adjourned. Thank you for your participation.
Thank you.